So today, this is episode 6
Yeah.
with Roger Allam, with you, of course. You're a master of stage and screen, and it's an honour to have you here. I'm really grateful that you took the time of the massive time of the technical difficulties, of the total cock ups. But no, this is great. This is great, and I really wanted to. The first thing I'd like to talk to you about, Roger, actually, is I don't know if I've spoken to you about it before, but I am actually curious how it all started. You know, how you wanted to how you wanted to do acting, what it was that drove you in that direction, you know?
Um, I think it was discovering going to the theatre when I was 16. And obviously, what I'm talking about a lot with you is how radically different the landscape of getting into acting in whatever branch of it was when I was 16. And indeed, when I started some years later than that, to what it is for your generation. When I was 16, I was studying Hamlet at school, and a friend of my sister's said, who lived fairly near the Old Vic in London, said to me, "Oh, you should go and see Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead at the Old Vic." And the Old Vic was then the National Theatre. Laurence Olivier was running it. So it's an old theatre, it's still there, built in the early 19th century, and that was the National Theatre. And so I said, well, I'd no idea how you got a ticket, because I'd been taken to the theatre before, but I'd never been on my own, you know. So I said, how do you do that? And she said, well, it's all right, you can queue on the day, and there'll probably be some tickets, and you can sit on padded benches in the gallery. And the price of the padded benches in the gallery, this is about 1970, 71 maybe, were 15 pence. 15 pence was the price of my tube fare from North London to Waterloo, a kind of 2 or 3 zone tube fare. It was the price of the theatre programme, and it was the price of my Savoy and chips on the way home, walking across the bridge. So it was very, very cheap, you know, to go to the Old Vic, because it was subsidised, as the National Theatre still is, but then it was subsidised. You weren't allowed to have any private sponsorship. So all the money from subsidy and from box office went into being able to get a repertoire of plays. So, you know, they might show 3 or 4 plays in a week, 3 different plays maybe, and to keep them in the repertoire and to subsidise ticket prices, which is why it was only 15 pence.
Yeah.
So I discovered this wonderful thing, and because I was Hamlet, I could understand Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. I knew what was going on, and it was just the thing of being sitting on my own, not on my own, amongst a crowd of strangers, but you know, I didn't go with anyone. Seeing this thing, the smell of it, everything. I mean, the sight of the actors coming out the stage door and going into the pub afterwards. Because, you know, I'd been to films, I'd watched loads of television and all that, but I'd never imagined how you could do any of that as a job, because I didn't know how film and television was made. You know, no idea really. Whereas in the theatre, you know, you can see the actors. You're in the same room as the actors, and you can see the actors going to the pub afterwards. And so that's what sort of caught me. And because it was very cheap, I could go all the time, you know, to the National Theatre at the Old Vic. And then I discovered other theatres. They weren't as cheap as that, but you could still, you know, get in and sit in the gallery and stuff, and afford it on, you know, pocket money or holiday jobs, which was what I'd be doing then, I guess.
Awesome. So really just sort of spawned from you, like, just being involved in that environment. That's nice. That's nice. So
Yeah,
how did then that develop? I guess you ended up in the Royal Shakespeare Company, didn't you? And
I
you
did.
did a lot of theatre there.
I did. But after that, I think my parents were very who came from quite a poor background, but were education obsessed. My father was a vicar. He was the first one of his family who kind of manual labor and stuff. And so I did some plays at school. So I was in a few plays at school, and I scraped into university and read drama at Manchester University because my parents was I didn't know anything about drama schools, and my parents were very, very anxious about me going to drama school, whereas university really meant something to them. So I scraped into university and read drama, where I did as little academic work as possible, but nonetheless sort of I absorbed a lot.
Yeah.
But there was, this was in the early to mid 70s. At Manchester Drama Department, they had a thing called Studio Group every Monday. There's an old beat up chapel in the middle of the campus that was the drama department's studio. And you could hire it, every Monday to put something on. Could be anything. Could be a full-length Ibsen play. Could be a comedy show. Could be improvisation. Could be anything. So there was an opportunity to discover what it was like to do a lot of stuff and a lot of different stuff just by trying and having a go and failing and succeeding sometimes. So
Yeah.
that there was that sort of set me off, and I saw a lot of different kind of fringe groups when I was at university, to sort of going to the National Theatre or the RSC or the West End and sitting in the cheap seats when I was in London. So when I left university, Time Out magazine in those days, at the back of it had a thing called Theatre Board, and various fringe groups would advertise jobs. And one, Belt and Braces, was a political group that I'd seen in Manchester, and I sort of, they were looking for actors and musicians. I played various instruments and sing, and those of those groups always wanted, that as a possibility, using music in their work. I didn't get anywhere with Belt and Braces, but there was another group forming called Monstrous Regiment, and I got in. I joined them, and when I was saying earlier about the huge difference of the whole landscape and ecology then, everywhere, we're talking about 1996 now, and their offices and and a rehearsal room was in a big old squat in Camden Square. Such a thing wouldn't exist today. It's probably a £2 or £3 million house for all I know. So we were squatting in Camden Square. You could get an Arts Council grant if you could set up a tour, and most of the members were a majority a female company. Most of the members had been working for some time. They had relationships with, the touring section of the Arts Council. And so you could set up a tour with enough money to guarantee you against loss.
Right.
And we had enough money to pay ourselves between a quarter and a third above the equity rate, which at that time was £36 a week. And we were paid £45 a week. So, that seemed quite a lot of money to me. The other thing that was different was that at the end of a tour, say a 12-week tour, they might be starting a new play in a month or two's time. It was very easy to sign on and get unemployment benefit. And that's what that's what made a lot of those groups possible, how you could live, because it wasn't, it wasn't a money, but it meant you could manage. and also flats were cheap. I got a cheap flat in Crouch End, a studio flat. I don't know, it was about £10 a week, something like that. So all those kind of things made it possible to get started, you know, which I think is much, much more difficult for your generation. And after a couple of years with them, I worked in regional theatres, you know, in Manchester and Glasgow and Birmingham, which again were repertory companies. So they'd do a new play every 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. And so I got a lot of experience. You know, I played Macbeth at Contact Theatre in Manchester. I was crap, but it was very useful, you know, and I did some other things as well. And so by the time I got to audition for the RSC, I'd got a fair amount of experience under my belt, you know. And then I got into the RSC, and I don't know, 10 years went by.
Yeah.
I stayed with them more or less 10 years, you know.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think for my generation that it is a little bit like there's not as much as that open, like, oh, you could look on the back of a magazine and you can just find something. It's more like you have to
get out there.
You really have to get out there and go. Yeah. But I think I have a question for you. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced it before or whatever, but I've had an experienced mentee that's made me aware that my ego got in front of my creation of art and trying to do my job, but the ego's getting in the way, right? So I had an audition come through and I was like, oh, I don't know. And I was like a bit apprehensive to do it. But then now I look back on it, I was like, wow, you're a fool to have not. I did do it, but you would have been a fool not to do it because of its, you know, because of your thoughts on it, you think it's not important. And I realized that, wow, I just let my entire ego get in the way of me doing what I am supposed to do, which is just to act and to create a suspense in disbelief. So my question to you is, like, have you ever experienced like such a thing where you realize, whoa, that got in the way when I believe that shouldn't have, that really like hindered me?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lifetime's work.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I turn things down because I thought, oh, that, you know, that's not a very good part. I don't know what, I don't want to do that. And afterwards, I've sometimes thought, I know I should have done that. Yeah. Why didn't I do that? Because for exactly what you say, I was thinking I should be playing a better part than that, you know. And also, when you were talking, it made me think of sometimes the way of. I think when I started, I took a lot. I received a lot of direction from directors as kind of criticism. So I'd be resistant to direction because I would perceive it as criticism, whereas actually they were probably intending just to sort of say, well, you know, why not try explore something more like there? But in that sense, I was kind of very defended, I suppose, in a way. Yeah. I'm defending myself against this criticism. And I think that took me a long time to come round to just sort of thinking, all right, I'll try it, and just sort of try and be more consciously more open and try anything and see whether it works, because that's all it's about, especially in the theatre, because you've got more time. That's, again, a radical difference between the theatre and film, because even when I was working in the Fringe and in regional theatre, we had sort of 4 weeks rehearsal. Yeah. So you get time to, you know, try things out and see how it fits, see whether it works.
Yeah. That's, it is I mean, you are correct. It's a lifetime's thing, but it's just something that, you know, happened recently where I was like, wondering, you know, how do you sort of, you know, get beyond that? But how's how was the transition from doing like a lot of stage work and then moving into TV and film? How was that for you? Like, what were the vast differences? Because I love both stage and film, but they are very different.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. The process might not be different, but the way you arrive at a character.
Mm.
But of course, the scale is very different. It took me a lot. I spent all my time up until probably my sort of mid-30s, really, working in the theatre. I did barely any television at all, and then I kind of, when I was nudging 40, I sort of thought, I've got to do, I've just got to, because work came in. I was constantly working in the theatre, but not making much money. So I consciously sort of thought, I've got to turn some of these plays down and try and work in film and television. And I had a good agent, and luckily that happened. I mean, the thing to me most different about it is that there's no rehearsal.
Mm.
You very, very rarely get any time, a stretch of time before a film or a TV to do more than maybe get together, and even that isn't happening now, and read it through all sitting around a table. Whereas, as you know, I mean, in the theatre, you get the chance to try things out over a period of time, and so things can be explored in a very different way. So I found that quite difficult to deal with, especially if you do something like, The Bill, where it's very, very quick turnover.
Yeah.
And you do something and you'd sort of say, oh, sorry, I made a bit of a fluff there, and say, it doesn't matter, move on.
Yeah. It's gone.
I mean, you wouldn't get, but it's, that was a major difference to me. I mean, the other difference is, of course, that when I was starting, I mean, a lot of theatre now is mic'd.
Mm.
A lot of it, even in quite small theatres, it's mic'd, and I don't really like that. I don't kind of respond to that so well, because what I loved when I was sitting on a padded bench in the back of the old Vic Theatre was that there were whole generations of actors, not only Laurence Olivier and Paul Scofield, but also, just actors who worked in theatres all their lives and had quite big theatres as well. I mean, the old Vic seats about 1,000 people.
Yeah.
For whom it was no effort to fill a space like that. And I loved the sense of theatre being acoustic, to do with the human voice. And that with great artists like Paul Scofield, he could speak seemingly without any effort. And sitting way at the back, you'd hear his voice as if he was next to you.
Mm.
And that seems to me to have been something that's sort of gone as technology has advanced. Technology has advanced so that now, for instance, it's very fashionable to have a soundscape. So there's noise maybe going on all the time, which you have to project above, or they might be using smart lights, which are noisy because they have fans inside them to keep them cool. There's a lot more ambient noise, I suppose, than there used to be. I think it's become harder for audiences to listen because of that. And I think actors of your generation, simply would not have the experience. I mean, what I said not so long ago, that it wasn't until I was well into my 30s that I did hardly any television at all, really. So all my time was spent shouting in pretty big rooms, and so I was used to that.
Yeah.
Whereas your generation wouldn't be used to that. By the time you're 35, you won't have done that the whole time. So the question of projection is a very different thing. I mean, sometimes when you watch TV, when you are flicking channels, you might find something from the 70s or whatever, and you hear people speaking like that,
Yeah.
as if they're in a big room, which they might not, which they're not, of course. So it's strange, and that does different things to style as well. It now seems to me sometimes that everyone feels that they're in a close-up the whole time, and so, and if they're mic'd and they're well mic'd, they can speak kind of like that. Could you hear me when I said that?
No, I could actually.
So you very quietly and not have to worry about whether you're being heard, because there's a technician taking care of that. Now, that's done something to the style of how we act, both on stage and in film and television, frankly, because it's often the case that you can watch something on, there have been many complaints by people, probably older people, saying I had to turn the subtitles on because I couldn't hear what they were saying.
Well, you know what? I watched a new film recently. I watched Dune Part 2 in the cinema, even in IMAX, and there were some moments where you're like, I miss what they say, because not only is it projection but also diction. You can't hear the words,
and also the sound is so loud.
Yeah,
there's such a lot of bass in the sound that it's harder to be clear. It's interesting. It's interesting that. So it's not that one thing's better than another. It's just that it's changed things, which would mean that if a younger actor has to go on stage in a big room and isn't mic'd, they might struggle.
Yeah,
because they haven't got the experience or the skill, not because they haven't got talent. It's nothing to do with that. It's just to do with experience.
Yeah, 100%. I think considering I had training, we were taught you have to use projection. They don't give you a mic for the sake of it. They do it because they want you to learn. So it is important. I agree. There is a interesting shift that's happening with sound, especially because I also saw Stranger Things in the West End, the new play.
Oh, yeah.
And it's super technical. The lights and everything of the lighting, the set is really amazing. However, I'd say it's a good medium, actually, because I can't lie, it was a very good experience. It was a very immersive experience, and they also used they incorporated film with the stage. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. Well, what would you feel about film and stage sort of merging into one?
Well, it just depends on the show, doesn't it? I mean, it depends what it is. If it's part of it and it helps and it adds to the experience and helps you understand it, why not? I mean, and that's something that's gone on for a long time. It probably happens more now.
Yeah.
But in the German theatre in nearly 100 years ago, they used mechanics and you ever hear of Piscator, famous director?
No, I haven't.
But he used kind of moving kind of pavements and platforms, and might use something like film, so you get differences of scale. I was in a musical, over 30 years ago, called City of Angels, in which and the musical was about the Hollywood of the 1930s, a kind of private eye musical. It's wonderful, big band kind of jazz stuff. And there was a sequence in which I had to mime walking along Michael Jackson style. So that, and there was a film behind me of the street going past me.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Like that. So, it's been around,
Like that
and
picture,
it was a fantastic sequence, it was really great.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Roger. I really appreciate the time you've taken. It was
I'm
it was
sorry it took too long.
no, it's,
Have
it's all right.
I done enough, or do you just
No,
want to
no,
get
we
on with
have. No, we definitely have. We
shut
definitely
up?
have. Do not worry. We definitely have. I mean, I haven't got the premium Zoom, so I only got 40 minutes anyway. So,
Oh,
but yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for taking up the time. And yeah, guys, I hope you learned something new today. I hope from this lesson, I just want to say one thing as well. Like, I think ego is really important. It's a lifelong journey, as Roger said, but just make sure it doesn't get in front of what you are meant to do or what your purpose is, because it will just mess it all up. But yeah, guys, have a lovely day. Peace out.